Mabuhay, Kamustika, welcome. How are you? This is Bob from Love Beyond the Sea. Today I've been browsing some profiles of Filipinas that a friend of mine wanted me to look at. He has caught Filipina fever, and I told him there's really no cure for Filipina fever. I had it at one time. The best thing to do is find a Filipina to marry. Now, I'd say he has good taste. However, I'm afraid he could be too picky. You know, he's having a hard time deciding on who to start communicating with. You know, like look at this one here. I'm looking at my computer. I can't show it to you, but you know, wow, she's only 4'11", like my wife. But he said he doesn't want anyone under 5 feet. Okay. This beauty over here, her profile says she weighs 99 pounds, but remember he's adamant that she weigh at least 100 pounds. I wonder if he noticed that when he looked at her profile. The next one he likes has nice, cute hair, I think, that isn't as long as he prefers. He is apparently only interested in a Filipina with the traditionally long, silky, smooth black hair. She has all that, it just isn't down to her shoulders. I'm not sure why he won't want this lady. He will say her skin probably isn't quite dark enough. You know, there's the morenas with nice dark skin, but there are shades of dark. So I think this one here, I think she'd make a good wife, but he thinks her skin is not dark enough. So, you know, to each his own. This next one looks nice, but she's wearing a colorful dress, and knowing him like I do, he will say that she must only be wearing those short, tiny jean shorts, or he won't be interested. And then this last one here says she's 30 years old, but his age range preference is 20 to 29, so she's probably not going to make the cut. It's too bad, since this woman does, it looks like on her profile, a lot of charity work. Seems like a nice one. Now, this friend of mine could have many options to him, but I can't convince him that he is maybe being too picky. So I don't forget to tell you, the Filipina is not likely to be very picky, so I don't think that the Westerner needs to be. If someone should be pickier, then I would say it ought to be the woman from the Philippines, if anybody is going to be picky, because I think they settle too often, but that's a video for another day. Today I'm going to talk about pickiness from Western men. You may feel like you have some ground to make up in your search for a Filipino wife with the quarantines and all that's going on in the Philippines. Believe me, we want to go there too, hopefully this year. So please use this opportunity to watch this channel, be more prepared to meet a woman over there in the Philippines. Men from all over the world have sought to marry a Filipina due to her beauty and more traditional values. Myself being one of them. We've been married for over 6.5 years now. At some point, we have to pull the trigger and decide on the lucky one, but that admittedly can be agonizing. Please subscribe here to Love Beyond the Sea, where I'd like to help men who are where I used to be by sharing what I have learned about seeking, finding, and living in marriage with a Filipina wife. Comments, they're always welcome. Remember to get notifications for upcoming videos. And also, to do that, you have to click add. It's an extra step to actually complete the process. I have 4 ways of pickiness today to share with you, and more in a subsequent video, because there are just a lot of ways to be picky. International dating presents a problem, albeit a good one, that is lacking at United States sites, for example, and that is the women in the Philippines actually want to get married. Whereas it is difficult to get any attention on the United States sites sometimes, internationally you actually will have options and have to make a choice. That's good, right? Yes, but the problem is how to decide on the finalists and how to pick the winner. I will link a playlist on internet dating for you to learn about this process with a Filipina, so that in today's video I can focus on being too picky. I've gone to the store and stood there looking at all the different types of toothpaste, thinking, why can't I make up my mind? They're all good. Just pick one. It is more challenging, though, when confronted with the task of narrowing down a list of quality Filipinas. A guy should be selective, just not too picky, because that will hinder his progress and use up time that could be spent petitioning this woman from the Philippines to be his wife or finding a different one. Now, assuming a person's must-haves have been met, here are some thoughts on why a man might be too picky and what he can do about it. Okay, let's say he has this belief that, they have to click right away. If a man is looking to establish chemistry right away, he would be eliminating candidates who, for whatever reason, didn't cause the sparks to fly in the first chat or two. Does that sound fair to either one? Chemistry is not a box that gets checked off in the woman's profile on a dating site. Frankly, I don't think any algorithm is going to be able to determine chemistry. I am not saying that if the initial chats have been duds to stay with it with a particular woman, but can't the chemistry, if that's what they're looking for, develop over some time? Let me know how long it took for you in the Filipina you are with to notice chemistry, or if you even have it, or if it even matters to you. In our case, I must have had enough chemistry to keep chatting with my wife for 4 hours a day, maybe not. I just wanted to learn more about her and keep in touch with her every day, keep her in my life. I really never thought about it. I just wanted a wife and I wanted to be a husband. I proposed to her on day 18. Day 18. I don't remember thinking we had a great chemistry going, but I do remember telling my pastor on just day 12, in fact I still have that email, that I was considering proposing to her. So we must have had something by then. I wasn't afraid to marry this woman and continued to develop our relationship as we went through the visa petition, and then where I think it really gets off the ground anyway, when you're married. I'm not crazy. We have a good marriage and have developed good chemistry, so I did something right. We wanted to get married and did in less than 8 weeks from a world apart. When someone is expecting to click right away with a Filipina or anyone else, I would suggest giving it another time or two. It might even be possible that the conversations were superficial, not very long, didn't supply enough to really start learning about each other. I will also link a playlist to at least a couple of live streams about questions to ask when getting to know a Filipina to help you in that early on process. Maybe certain questions could spark more interest. I will link a video about chemistry also in the description box. They also, now, number 2, they might feel like they are limiting their search for just certain cities. Since I'm talking about choosing a Filipina, it is possible a foreign man might limit his search to a couple of well-known cities, like Cebu, Manila. A lot of people like Davao City, where I met my wife. It's about 1.5, 2 million people, or a particular main island. So there's some limits. He may have heard one is too dangerous. Perhaps he has heard of the crazy traffic in Manila and won't go there, or that's the only place he's familiar with or ever heard of. He might only want a province woman, maybe only one from the city. In my case, I knew nothing about the Philippines and couldn't have found it on a map. Maybe, what's that app? Google Maps. I just knew the woman that I had been talking to lived there. I talked to about 4 or 5 of them. Manila, I had heard of that before because of the Thrilla in Manila boxing match there a long time ago. Some of you will remember. I don't know if I had heard of Cebu before, certainly not Davao City. Couldn't even pronounce it for 6 months. That was probably an advantage for me, though. Another area somebody could get too picky on is an overemphasis on compatibility. This area is more tangible than the feeling of chemistry. With chemistry, you feel like you have something going, that you just seem to easily relate to each other. Compatibility requires less feeling and more discernment, using your mind, as to whether or not you and the Filipina have enough of the most important elements that you need to get married. The question is, early on, before you're married, is how much compatibility is needed. If there's compatibility in 2 main areas, does the foreign man excuse me, look for 3, or always look for someone that might be a little bit more compatible than the others he has chatted with, well, he would be venturing into getting picky there. But yes, selecting the right woman to marry is a big decision, but it doesn't have to be turned into an agonizing one. Regardless of how much you have in common, there are enough differences in culture and perhaps age to make for conflict. I think there will always be a certain amount of conflict no matter who you choose. Keep in mind that you will naturally have less in common, which could make for less compatibility with a woman from the Philippines, especially with a large age gap. Going to a different country to marry a woman who might be a lot younger, who is difficult to get to know well because of the lack of in-person time together, lack of vacation time available, makes finding compatibility, I think, just take more time. I don't think it has to be there immediately. As such, I suggest patiently letting compatibility show up if it is going to. It might not be evident early on. You can always make yourself compatible to each other by taking interest in each other's activities, being unselfish, really wanting what's best for the other person. Isn't it possible that compatibility could be developed over time? Is it possible that just having a couple of must-haves provides enough compatibility to get and stay married? Let me know what you think. As much as I like to think things through, and I'm told I think too much about the future, I streamlined my search for a wife by not getting too far ahead of myself. It was really one step at a time. I was okay with marrying a Filipina who was a Christian, who I got along with. That was about it. I wanted to be attracted to her and was willing to trust her and trust God that we would do what we needed to do to stay married. I mean, once you're married, you both have some work to do, of course. So you have to marry someone that's willing to roll up their sleeves and put in the hard work necessary to forge a good marriage. That was on Christian Filipina to find a wife, or that I was on Christian Filipina to find a wife should have been evident to all the women there. So I think it was perfectly okay to be honest about my intentions. That's what a site like Christian Filipina is for. I think many of the Filipinas there are the same way. With that being understood, I wasted no time to try to prove I was hungry to get married. My emphasis was on, if we got married, what do we need to agree on? What would it be like? A Filipina isn't likely to have a long list of necessities or be real picky to look for, like we would in America, dating sites, which makes getting married easier for the foreigner. I think it should. My profile indicated my intent for marriage. Our chats, among other things, were about what defined a marriage, what each person's role was going to be, which I call the basics. If we were going to be going in opposite directions in the vision for a marriage, I certainly wanted to know that sooner than later. No dating site algorithm was going to match us up. Many people think negatively of finding an international wife, especially with an age gap. You'll need to be prepared to accept some social disapproval, or at least know that it exists and not get bent out of shape about it. And speaking of age, compared to America, where you might be restricted to being within a few years of each other to not have people think poorly of you, it isn't that way in the Philippines. It's almost as if that isn't an issue at all. But with many women it is, but there's plenty of women where it isn't. You might be able to marry someone from 18 and up, but that may not be the best. Another thing you have to think about, but that's for another day, another video. With age not being much of a factor, it can be easy to be too picky. Why? Because you have more options. You ask yourself, how young before she is too young for me? If she is more than 5 years younger from you, you are already subject to societal disapproval in the West. What is the best age for me? How would I even determine that? When you decide on an age bracket, next you have to try to gauge the maturity of all of the women in that bracket. And this requires many chat sessions. Is 25 that much different than 26 or 29 than 30? I think yes, it very well may be. I chose 20 to 30. That's what I started out with for my age preference, and my wife happened to have a preference of 30 to 55. So she wanted an older guy. And I happen to be 53, so I just made the cut. Keep in mind that part of a younger age group is the likelihood of wanting children. I can see this being a decision easy to be too picky with. You cannot expect a younger Filipina to not want children. I will continue with more pickiness to avoid soon in an upcoming video right here on Love Beyond the Sea.